For decades, we have studied China's dynasties, marveled at the vastness of its territory, and measured the force of its modern rise. But to truly understand China, you must look beyond the map. What if the empire's greatest secrets are not buried in distant legends, but standing in plain sight, quietly challenging history itself? We are searching for places where nature appears to bend reality and where human ambition has reached heights once thought impossible. This is a journey into the unseen tapestry of the East. The journey first brings us to the famous abandoned fishing village of Ho Tu Wan Village. Once a thriving coastal community, now completely reclaimed by vegetation. What was once filled with the rhythm of nets and engines has become a surreal green labyrinth, a landscape that calls to mind the world of ancient fairy tales. Then we ascend the dark volcanic ridges of Heidushan Mountain, where ash-black slopes and jagged formations stretch toward the horizon. The terrain is so stark and otherworldly that it feels closer to the surface of the moon than to any familiar place on Earth. Finally, we descend into the buried legacy of the first emperor, deep beneath the earth, concealing the vast mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, an immense underground complex still guarding some of the most astonishing secrets ever constructed by human hands. For the next hour, we peel back layers of myth and history, using science and exploration to reveal the geological, biological, and historical wonders that shape a hidden China. This is a China we have never witnessed before. The journey begins now. Heidushan Mountain. In the arid reaches of northwestern China, Heidushan Mountain rises from the desert like a fragment of another planet. Its name means Black Poison Mountain, a reference to the dark volcanic rock that blankets its slopes in charcoal tones. From a distance, the terrain resembles a frozen lava sea, rippled and fractured beneath an immense sky. Heidushan was shaped by volcanic eruptions millions of years ago, when molten basalt spread across the land and cooled into hardened waves of stone. Wind erosion gradually sculpted this lava into jagged ridges and shallow ravines, forming a surface that feels almost lunar. The surrounding region receives only a few inches of rainfall each year, while seasonal temperature swings can exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit between peak summer heat and winter cold. The geology records ancient tectonic tension that once stretched and fractured the crust of this region. Basalt plates, cracked columns, and mineral oxidation reveal a landscape forged by fire and preserved by aridity. To protect this fragile terrain from erosion and damage, authorities have constructed elevated wooden boardwalks that guide movement across the volcanic surface. These pathways minimize direct impact, allowing the rock formations to remain intact while preserving the visual integrity of the site. Haidushan is not defined by towering altitude. It is defined by texture, contrast, and the quiet memory of magma sealed into stone. A stark geological archive exposed under open sky. Badain Jiran Desert. In the remote interior of Inner Mongolia, the land begins to rise without warning inside the vast Badain Jiran Desert. From a distance, it looks like an ocean frozen mid-storm, but these waves are dunes, some climbing more than 1,600 feet into the sky. This desert spans nearly 19,000 square miles, yet it refuses to behave like one. Rainfall averages less than 4 inches a year, summer surface temperatures surge past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and winter nights collapse far below zero, forging a climate of violent extremes. And still, between these colossal dunes, water appears. More than 100 lakes shimmer in impossible shades of blue and green, sustained not by rain, but by deep underground aquifers, traveling silently from distant mountain ranges. Around several of these lakes stand ancient desert temples, their reflections trembling on the water as if history itself is suspended between sand and sky. Centuries ago, caravan routes connected to the Silk Road traced the margins of this desert, where traders moved silk, spices, and precious goods across shifting sands that could erase a path overnight. Even the dunes have a voice, producing a deep, resonant hum when dry. Uniform grains cascade down steep slopes, vibrating together in synchronized motion, like the lowest note of a colossal natural instrument. The Badain Jiran Desert is not empty space. It is pressure, heat, sound, and hidden water locked in constant negotiation. A place where silence can sing, and where the laws of desert geography are rewritten in sand. Terracotta Army. Beneath the farmland of central China, near the ancient city of Xi'an, an underground army stood in silence for more than 2,000 years. Discovered in 1974 by local farmers digging a well, the Terracotta Army revealed one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds of the 20th century. The site dates back to the reign of Qin Shi Huang, who unified China in 221 BC at the age of 38. Determined to rule in the afterlife as he had in life, he ordered the construction of a vast mausoleum complex guarded by life-sized clay soldiers. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 8,000 warriors, along with hundreds of horses and wooden chariots. Each figure stands roughly 6 feet tall, with distinct facial features, hairstyles, and armor details reflecting real military ranks of the Qin dynasty. The figures were crafted from local clay, assembled in sections, then fired in kilns before being painted in vivid pigments that have largely faded with exposure to air. The burial complex covers nearly 22 square miles, though only a portion has been excavated. Beneath the central mound, historians believe the emperor's sealed tomb remains intact, described in ancient texts as containing rivers of mercury designed to replicate the geography of China. Today, the site functions as a major cultural landmark and research center, drawing millions of visitors each year. The Terracotta Army is not simply a collection of statues. It is a monumental intersection of engineering, imperial ambition, funerary belief, and large-scale craftsmanship preserved in earth for more than 2 millennia. Redefine Waterfall. Along the border between China and Vietnam, where limestone hills rise from subtropical forest, Redefine Waterfall unfolds in layered curtains of white water. Known as one of the largest transnational waterfalls in the world, it stretches roughly 200 feet wide and drops more than 100 feet over stepped rock formations. The cascade is fed by the Guichun River, whose seasonal flow determines the waterfall's scale and force. During the summer monsoon, rainfall across the karst highlands swells the river dramatically, transforming Redefine into a roaring wall of water. In the drier winter months, the flow narrows, revealing terraced cliffs sculpted by centuries of erosion. The surrounding landscape belongs to a classic karst system, shaped by the slow dissolution of limestone over millions of years. Historically, this borderland served as a passage for trade and cultural exchange between southern China and northern Vietnam. Today, wooden rafts carry visitors close to the base of the falls, where mist rises in drifting veils and sunlight fractures into rainbows. Detien Waterfall is not a single plunge of water. It is a dynamic system of river, stone, and climate in constant interaction. A living demonstration of how geology and gravity collaborate to redraw the landscape with every passing season. Hau Tuan Village. Along the rugged coastline of Shengshan Island, part of China's Zhoushan archipelago, Hau Tuan Village clings to a steep hillside above the East China Sea. Stone houses rise in narrow tiers, their gray walls now wrapped in thick layers of emerald vines that spill over rooftops and down stairways. Established in the mid-20th century, Hau Tuan once sheltered more than 2,000 fishermen and their families. Boats crowded the harbor, and the rhythm of daily life followed the tides. Yet isolation defined the settlement. Supplies were difficult to transport, access to schools and hospitals was limited, and by the 1990s, most residents relocated to larger ports with stronger infrastructure. The village slowly emptied. Nature advanced with quiet precision. Subtropical humidity, seasonal monsoon rains, and persistent sea air accelerated plant growth. Within a few decades, vines overtook facades, windows, and balconies, transforming rigid architecture into layered green relief. Today, Hau Tuan has become a magnet for travelers and photographers drawn to its surreal atmosphere. Visitors climb the hillside paths to capture the contrast between geometric stone structures and cascading vegetation. Hau Tuan is no longer defined by fishing nets or harbor noise. It stands as a striking visual intersection of abandonment and renewal, where human construction and coastal climate continues shaping the same mountainside. Hulunbuir grassland. In the far northeast of China, where the land stretches toward the Russian border in uninterrupted waves, the Hulunbuir grassland spans more than 30,000 square miles of open steppe. It is one of the largest and most intact temperate grassland systems in Eurasia, shaped by wind, river sediment, and long seasonal cycles. The terrain rolls in wide, gradual swells, nourished by the Hulun and Bir lakes and a network of meandering waterways. During summer, temperatures often settle in the 60s and 70s Fahrenheit, allowing dense grasses to regenerate quickly under extended daylight. Large herds of cattle, sheep, and horses continue to graze across these plains, sustaining a pastoral economy rooted in mobility and seasonal rhythm. Long before the era of Genghis Khan, this region was home to ancient nomadic tribes who refined horseback riding and livestock herding skills passed down through countless generations. Today, visitors come to experience horseback exploration across open grasslands, witness Nadam-style cultural celebrations, and spend nights beneath vast, star-filled skies that stretch unbroken from horizon to horizon. Hulunbuir is not defined by monuments or city skylines. It is defined by scale, motion, and the enduring rhythm of life lived under an immense sky. Li River. In southern China's Guangxi region, the Li River winds for roughly 83 miles between the cities of Guilin and Yangshuo, carving one of the most iconic karst landscapes on Earth. Its course threads through steep limestone towers that rise abruptly from the valley floor, some climbing more than 1,000 feet into humid, subtropical air. The geology here began forming more than 300 million years ago, when this region lay beneath a shallow tropical sea. Thick layers of limestone accumulated from marine sediments, later uplifted by tectonic forces and sculpted by rainfall rich in carbonic acid. The Li River itself functions as both architect and archivist. Seasonal monsoon rains swell its flow, accelerating erosion and transporting sediment downstream. In drier months, the water level drops, revealing exposed rock shelves and narrow beaches shaped by persistent hydraulic force. High humidity rising from the river surface often meets cooler, early morning air, producing a thin veil of mist at dawn. Historically, this river corridor supported farming villages and trade routes linking inland Guangxi to the Pro River system. Today, bamboo rafts and small cruise boats glide along its surface, offering close views of formations like Elephant Trunk Hill, where limestone curves outward in a natural arch. The Li River is not simply scenic water. It is a living geological laboratory where chemistry, climate, and time collaborate to transform solid stone into a landscape that appears almost painted into existence. Fenghuang, ancient town. At a bend in the Tuo River in western Hunan, Fenghuang ancient town rises from mist and mountain shadow. For more than 300 years, wooden houses have lined this narrow valley, their foundations anchored along slow-moving water. Encircled by steep hills, the town developed within a natural corridor that once linked central China to the southwest. During the Qing dynasty, it functioned as both military outpost and trading center, its position shaped by terrain and river access rather than open plains. Timber stilt houses extend over the riverbank, elevating living spaces above seasonal floods. Built with interlocking wooden frames, these structures adapt to uneven ground while reflecting centuries of regional craftsmanship. Stone lanes follow the curve of the valley, and arched bridges connect opposite banks in a compact urban pattern defined by geography. Generations of Miao and Tujiak communities left their imprint in textiles, silver ornaments, and riverside markets that once exchanged tea and medicinal herbs. Today, lanterns glow against dark water as visitors walk along the Tuo River, staying in restored guest houses and watching tiled roofs ripple in reflection. Fenghuang endures not as a relic, but as a river town shaped by mountain walls, flowing water, and the steady negotiation between landscape and human design. Dupotang Waterfall. In Guizhou Province, along the upper reaches of the Baishui River, Dupotang Waterfall spreads across the landscape in a wide curtain of white water. Unlike towering vertical cascades, this waterfall is defined by breadth. It measures roughly 340 feet wide, yet drops only about 70 feet, creating a low, powerful sheet that surges over a broad limestone ledge. The geology beneath Dupotang belongs to a karst plateau formed hundreds of millions of years ago from ancient marine limestone. Over time, slightly acidic rainwater dissolved the rock, carving channels and terraces that guide the river's flow. Seasonal monsoon rains dramatically alter the volume of water. During peak summer, the current expands across the entire rock face, generating a deep, resonant roar that can be heard from nearly a mile away. The waterfall's shallow plunge pool reveals layered sediment and smooth rock polished by centuries of hydraulic force. Its wide, even formation has made it a favored filming location, as the water spreads in a nearly symmetrical arc across the cliff. Today, elevated walkways allow visitors to approach safely, offering views from above and below the cascade. Dopotang is not defined by height alone. It is a study in surface tension, erosion, and seasonal energy, where river and limestone continue shaping one another in steady motion. Lijiang Old Town. At the edge of the Himalayas in Yunnan province, where snow-fed streams descend from Jade Dragon Snow Mountain, Lijiang Old Town unfolds across a highland basin more than 8,000 feet above sea level. For over 8 centuries, this settlement has stood at a crossroads of trade, culture, and mountain geography. Founded during the Song dynasty and expanded under the Yuan, Lijiang became a vital stop along the ancient Tea-Horse Road, a network that linked southwestern China to Tibet. Caravans once carried tea bricks across steep passes, exchanging them for horses and medicinal goods, shaping the town's economic identity. Unlike many traditional Chinese cities, Lijiang was built without a rigid grid. Its layout follows the natural flow of streams that branch through the town in a network of canals and stone bridges. Water channels not only supplied households, but also functioned as an early urban fire control system. Timber-framed courtyard houses, constructed with interlocking beams and tiled roofs, reflect the craftsmanship of the Nachi people who have lived here for generations. Today, lantern-lit alleys and flowing water draw millions of visitors each year. Cafes and guest houses occupy restored wooden homes, while narrow streets preserve the rhythm of a mountain town shaped by trade and terrain. Lijiang Old Town is not simply preserved architecture. It is a living adaptation to altitude, climate, and centuries of exchange beneath towering peaks. Tibetan Plateau. High above much of the planet, the Tibetan Plateau rises as the largest and highest plateau on Earth, averaging more than 14,000 feet above sea level. Spanning roughly 1 million square miles across western China and neighboring regions, it is often called the roof of the world. The plateau formed from a monumental tectonic collision that began about 50 million years ago, when the Indian plate pressed into the Eurasian plate. That slow, relentless convergence continues today, lifting the land and giving rise to mountain systems, including the Himalayas. This high-altitude environment shapes climate across Asia. Glaciers and snowfields feed major rivers such as the Yangtze, Yellow, and Mekong, supplying water to nearly 2 billion people downstream. For centuries, Tibetan communities adapted through pastoral nomadism, herding yak across alpine grasslands and building monasteries that anchor spiritual life against vast horizons. Buddhist traditions, prayer flags, and high-altitude settlements reflect a culture shaped by altitude and isolation. The Tibetan Plateau is not merely high ground. It is a climatic engine, a tectonic frontier, and a cultural landscape suspended between Earth's crust and open sky. Farong Town. Perched on a cliff above the Yushui River in western Hunan province, Farong Town appears to pour directly from stone into water. Also known as Wangchun, this settlement stands more than 2,000 feet above sea level, where layered cliffs overlook a deep river valley carved over millions of years. The town's most striking feature is the waterfall that runs through its center. Water spills nearly 60 feet over a broad rock ledge, forming a silver curtain that flows beneath wooden stilt houses built along the cliff's edge. These rocks belong to an ancient sedimentary system shaped by long periods of erosion, as river currents gradually cut through soft layers of sandstone and limestone. Farong's position once made it a strategic stop along regional trade routes linking Hunan to neighboring provinces. Stone steps climb steep slopes, and narrow lanes follow the natural contours of the terrain rather than a rigid urban grid. Architecture here adapts to gravity, with timber-framed houses elevated above uneven ground to resist seasonal flooding. Today, visitors walk behind the waterfall along a carved pathway, feeling mist rise from the plunge pool below. Lanterns illuminate cliffside buildings at night, reflecting in the river that continues to shape the valley floor. Farong Town is not simply a scenic village. It is a geological overlook where water, rock, and human settlement intersect in vertical layers above a moving river. Zhangjiajie National Forest Park. In northwestern Hunan province, Zhangjiajie National Forest Park rises in a forest of stone. More than 3,000 quartz sandstone pillars surge from the valley floor, some ascending over 3,000 feet into humid, subtropical air. Their vertical forms appear almost engineered, yet they are the result of patient geological forces working across hundreds of millions of years. The rock here began as ancient marine sediment laid down during the Paleozoic era. Tectonic uplift elevated these layers, and prolonged erosion from rainfall, temperature shifts, and plant root expansion fractured the sandstone into isolated columns. Unlike limestone karst, these pillars are shaped primarily by physical weathering, where water infiltrates cracks, freezes, expands, and gradually separates the rock into towering shafts. Dense forest blankets the lower elevations, feeding a moist microclimate that accelerates erosion while cloaking the bases in green. Designated as China's first national forest park in 1982, the area now features glass walkways, cable cars, and suspended bridges that allow visitors to navigate extreme vertical terrain. Zhangjiajie is not merely scenic wilderness, it is a natural laboratory of uplift and erosion, where gravity and time sculpted stone into a skyline that rivals any built city. Panjin Red Beach. Along the coast of Liaoning Province, where the Liao River empties into the Bohai Sea, Panjin Red Beach spreads across one of the world's largest wetland systems. From a distance, the shoreline appears painted in deep crimson, as if the earth itself has shifted color with the season. The red hue comes from a species of seepweed known as Sueda salsa, a salt-tolerant plant that thrives in alkaline tidal flats. Each spring, the plant begins as green shoots rising from mineral-rich mud. By early autumn, high salinity and temperature shifts trigger a biochemical transformation, turning entire marshlands a vivid red. These wetlands form through centuries of sediment deposition carried by the Liao River. Fine silt accumulated along the coast, creating broad intertidal zones shaped by tidal cycles and gradual land uplift. The ecosystem depends on a delicate balance of freshwater inflow and seawater intrusion, which regulates soil chemistry and vegetation patterns. Today, elevated wooden boardwalks extend for miles across the marsh, allowing visitors to walk above the fragile habitat without disturbing it. Observation platforms provide panoramic views of red vegetation stretching toward the horizon. Panjin Red Beach is not sand in the traditional sense. It is a living tidal landscape where geology, hydrology, and plant adaptation converge, transforming coastal mud into a seasonal field of crimson. Hukou Waterfall. At the border of Shanxi and Shanxi provinces, the Yellow River narrows abruptly, forced through a rocky channel barely 100 feet wide. Here at Hukou Waterfall, the river compresses, accelerates, and explodes downward in a surge of sediment-heavy water. The Yellow River, stretching more than 3,000 miles across northern China, carries vast quantities of loess sediment eroded from the Loess Plateau. Over thousands of years, this fine yellow silt carved a deep canyon through soft deposits, creating steep cliffs and a dramatic bottleneck. When seasonal rains swell the river, flow rates increase dramatically, and water plunges nearly 70 feet into a turbulent basin below. Unlike many waterfalls formed from resistant bedrock, Hukou evolves continuously. The underlying loess and sandstone erode under immense hydraulic pressure, gradually shifting the position of the cascade upstream. The impact generates a thunderous roar and mist that can rise dozens of feet into the air, often forming rainbows in direct sunlight. Historically, this stretch of river marked a natural boundary between regions and served as a symbolic site in Chinese culture, representing the raw force of the Yellow River itself. Today, reinforced viewing platforms allow visitors to approach the canyon edge safely, observing one of the most powerful sections of China's second longest river. Hukou waterfall is not defined by height alone. It is defined by compression, sediment, and relentless motion, where one of Asia's great rivers reshapes its own canyon in real time. Yangshuo. In southern China's Guangxi region, where limestone towers rise like stone sentinels from emerald plains, Yangshuo unfolds as a living laboratory of karst geology shaped over immense spans of time. Over 300 million years ago, this entire region rested beneath a shallow tropical sea, where thick layers of calcium-rich marine sediment slowly accumulated, compressed, and hardened into vast limestone beds. Later, tectonic uplift raised the ancient seabed thousands of feet, exposing the rock to rainfall that, slightly acidic in composition, dissolved the limestone and sculpted the dramatic karst towers that now dominate the skyline. Some of these peaks rise more than 1,000 feet above the Li River, forming steep pinnacles, enclosed sinkholes, and cave systems that reveal the region's complex geological evolution. The Li River winds nearly 50 miles from Guilin to Yangshuo, carving a natural corridor through the stone forest, while seasonal floods replenish fertile floodplains that have supported farming communities for centuries. Within caves such as Moon Hill, stalactites and stalagmites grow drop by drop, preserving mineral records of climate shifts that span tens of thousands of years and offering scientists insight into past environmental change. Today, Yangshuo stands at the intersection of science and tourism, where visitors cycle through rice paddies, climb vertical limestone walls, and drift along the river, experiencing a landscape where geology, geography, and human history converge in one extraordinary terrain. Pingyao, ancient city. In the heart of Shanxi province, Pingyao, ancient city, stands as a rare, intact window into imperial China, its walls enclosing more than 600 years of continuous urban history. Constructed during the Ming Dynasty in the 14th century, the city wall stretches roughly 4 miles in circumference and rises nearly 40 feet high, built from layers of rammed earth reinforced with brick and stone. From above, the layout resembles a turtle, a traditional Chinese symbol of longevity, with 6 fortified gates and 72 watchtowers guarding the perimeter like sentinels of a vanished era. Pingyao flourished during the Qing dynasty as a financial powerhouse, home to Rishengchang, widely recognized as China's first draft bank, founded in the early 19th century. Merchants here pioneered nationwide remittance systems, allowing silver to move across thousands of miles without physically transporting it, an innovation that reshaped commerce in northern China. Architecturally, the city preserves more than 3,000 courtyard residences. Their gray brick facades, carved wooden beams, and symmetrical layouts reflecting Confucian hierarchy and family structure. Today, Pingyao is a UNESCO World Heritage Site where visitors walk stone-paved streets unchanged in width for centuries, exploring museums, ancestral halls, and lantern-lit alleys. It is not a reconstruction, but a living grid of history, where urban planning, finance, architecture, and culture converge inside a fortress that has endured for over half a millennium. Lang Waterfall. High on the eastern edge of the Tibetan Plateau in Sichuan Province, Lang Waterfall spreads across the Shuzheng Valley like a curtain woven from alpine meltwater. Perched at an elevation of more than 7,900 feet above sea level, it is considered one of the widest high-altitude waterfalls in China, stretching nearly 1,000 feet from side to side during peak flow. Unlike vertical plunges that carve deep chasms, Lang descends in layered steps over travertine terraces formed by calcium-rich deposits carried by mineral springs. These terraces are the product of thousands of years of hydrochemical reactions, as dissolved calcium carbonate precipitates and hardens, building natural dams that redirect and divide the water into braided streams. Seasonal snowmelt from surrounding mountains feeds the system, while tectonic uplift along the edge of the plateau shape the broad valley that allows the waterfall to fan outward rather than drop straight down. In winter, when temperatures fall well below freezing, parts of the cascade crystallize into suspended sheets of ice, preserving the geometry of flowing water in frozen form. Within Zhujiaigou National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Lang has become both a scientific case study in carbonate geomorphology and a major tourism landmark, where visitors follow wooden walkways to observe how geology, climate, and elevation collaborate to sculpt one of Western China's most expansive waterfalls.